In 2013, the Dragon Ball series was brought out of retirement with a brand new movie, Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods. 2 years later, this movie would receive a sequel called Dragon Ball Z Resurrection F. The success of these two movies would cause Toei to seemingly bring Dragon Ball out of retirement forever with Dragon Ball Super. Dragon Ball Super redid those first two movies and introduced them as arcs to start the series off, and continued to run until its 131st episode, ending in 2018. It was wildly successful from a viewership standpoint. Fans loved the series a lot, and it sucked. In my almost 60 years of living, Dragon Ball Super is one of the worst continuations of a series that I've ever seen. I could give an arc by arc breakdown and tell you why every single arc in this series almost doesn't make sense at all to exist or ended in one of the worst ways possible. I could sit here for an hour and break down to you all the character assassinations and retcons that constantly happen, but that's not what I'm gonna do. I've already done 2 separate videos about how both Goku's character was assassinated in Dragon Ball Super and how God Ki makes no sense as an addition to the power system. You're more than welcome to check out both those videos after this one. This video, however, is going to be split into 2 major talking points, those being inconsistencies and plot holes. And while you can say plot holes are sort of inconsistencies in themselves, I think that some inconsistencies are much less of a sin than what we would consider plot holes to be for overall storytelling. I also want to mention I have no beef at all with the Dragon Ball Super movies. I enjoy both Dragon Ball Super Broly, and while to a much lesser extent, I also enjoy Dragon Ball Super Superhero. Before we get started, I'd like to ask if you could leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. We're 20 subscribers away from 1 million, and I want to hit that within the hour. Recreating Battle of Gods in Dragon Ball Z Resurrection F into Dragon Ball Super was not a good idea in the slightest. On the surface, this is a great idea. You need to retell these stories in this much more accessible format so that more people can see them and get used to what is now Dragon Ball. Of course, when you get a do-over at a story, you're expected to, or at least you should, be able to work out every single problem that was in the first version of that story. Battle of Gods and Resurrection F should have served as a draft as to what the new arcs would be whenever they were implemented into the TV show. Battle of Gods was really in no need of this. That movie was already as good as it was going to get on its own. If anything, the TV show made the arc too much longer and messed up the pacing for no real reason. 14 20-minute episodes is just far too long to tell the story that a movie told in 1 hour and 30 minutes. Resurrection F, however, comes with a laundry list of problems that should have been fixed when it came to the TV show, and instead none of these problems were addressed, and if anything, they only got much worse. That's in addition to creating new problems that come with this version of the story. Tagoma, for example, is killed very quickly when Frieza is revived in Resurrection F, but the show almost reinvents this character and makes him Frieza's sparring partner for the 4 months, leading to him being incredibly powerful. This is all only for his body to be taken by Captain Ginyu, and then for Ginyu to be one-shot by Vegeta in base form whenever Goku and Vegeta arrive to Earth. I guess the only real cool thing that this amounted to is that Vegeta had now killed every single member of the Ginyu Force. Aside from that, Resurrection F still has pretty much the same story beats as the original Frieza arc. To be fair, I guess I can't say that's out of place considering this movie is the resurrection of Frieza, but everything is done so much worse this time around. There are a couple curveballs thrown in that make the film seem somewhat fresh, but overall, everyone can't beat Frieza. They wait for Goku to arrive. Goku arrives, him and Frieza are about equal. Frieza pulls out a new form. Goku himself also pulls out a new form. Frieza has the upper hand for a little bit. He doesn't know how to use the new form well, so Goku ends up taking the upper hand back. Now, where the curveball gets thrown in is Sorbet on the side, who shoots Goku with his ray gun while he's off guard, which is a payoff to something that was mentioned earlier in the movie that I'm going to touch on in a minute. This opens the door for what is obviously Vegeta getting his payback on Frieza after all these years. And that's what starts happening. Vegeta starts beating Frieza to the point where he can't even maintain his gold form anymore, and he's on his hands and knees, literally sitting there waiting for the kill shot, and then he blows up the planet. I think this is mainly stupid because it makes the movie contradict itself. Earlier in the movie, we're treated to a scene of Goku and Vegeta training with Whis. Whis, obviously being the martial arts expert that he is able to point out subtle flaws in Goku and Vegeta's fighting styles that they themselves are unaware of. Goku's weakness has been shown at this point multiple times. Goku is far too overconfident in the middle of battle, which leads to him being far too relaxed, which also leaves him open for counterattacks. Whis demonstrates it by punching him in the side, and obviously we saw Sorbet knock him straight out of Super Saiyan Blue while he wasn't paying attention. Vegeta's problem, on the other hand, is that since he is so tense during battle, it prevents him from being able to react quickly in certain situations. The problem is the movie never properly portrays this. Instead, the reason Vegeta loses to Frieza in Resurrection F is because of the same weakness that Goku has, which is him being overconfident. Vegeta had Frieza dead to rights, on his hands and knees, literally unable to do anything against him at all. Ki blast to his head, one shot, and Frieza would have been gone forever. In this situation, Vegeta doesn't need to react quickly, he needs to act quickly. He doesn't need to be giving Frieza a speech. He doesn't need to be telling him this is the end, no more resurrections for you. He needs to be ending Frieza's life the way he intended to in the first place. If we isolated this scene from Resurrection F and Dragon Ball Super and just watched it as a natural extension of Dragon Ball Z, this scene wouldn't even be too out of place for Vegeta's character. Vegeta's always very overconfident and cocky. The problem is the movie gives Vegeta a weakness that is never properly paid off the same way Goku's weakness is paid off. Vegeta instead loses for the exact same reasons that Goku was weak to Frieza. Obviously, this results in the literal stupidest end to the movie that could have possibly been written, where Whis rewinds time and Goku flies in and blows Frieza up. I don't need to sit here and justify Vegeta killing Frieza. Anyone with half a brain, and most of the people who watch the movie or the show, could tell you why that would have been the most satisfying conclusion to this little story arc. Don't get me wrong, Goku killing Frieza also has its own satisfying conclusion to it, but Goku already got to defeat Frieza, and regardless of that, it was done in the worst way you could possibly imagine it being done anyway. Before I move on from Resurrection F, does anyone remember that Piccolo died in this arc? Piccolo was shot dead by Frieza at the beginning of this arc in an attempt to recreate him sacrificing himself for Gohan back in the Saiyan saga whenever he was killed by Nappa. This death was so meaningless and unimportant that they didn't even bother reviving Piccolo on screen. The revival happened off screen. I also think the modern era of Dragon Ball is simply better if Resurrection F never existed at all. I might elaborate on that throughout the video, and I'm definitely going to touch on it when I cover the next arc, that being Universe 6 versus Universe 7. I know this video is called Dragon Ball Super Sucks, and I'm supposed to be pointing out the things that suck, but the Universe 6 versus Universe 7 tournament is a great example of things that should have been in Dragon Ball Super from the very beginning. The stakes of this arc are extremely believable, and the arc is extremely inoffensive whenever you're actually watching it with your own eyes. You don't feel like the writers think you have caveman intelligence and can't understand what's going on. If you don't remember the stakes from this arc, Champa happened to try some of Earth's food from Universe 7 and he really liked it. He was going to use the Super Dragon Balls after he got them all to teleport Earth from Universe 7 to Universe 6. This is good stakes for the arc because, in case everyone forgot, Dragon Ball Super does not take place after the end of Dragon Ball Z. Dragon Ball Super takes place within the 10-year time skip after the Buu Saga to before the last tournament in Dragon Ball Z. That being said, we know that a lot of these characters are alive and healthy by the end of the story. Earth being in a different spot doesn't really affect that in any way, shape, or form. So if it was the case that Universe 6 won this tournament, effectively nothing changes for the end of the story. This arc also expands Dragon Ball in some of the literal coolest ways. We find out that of the other 11 universes that exist, so 12 in total, the ones whose number add up to 13 are twin universes. So naturally, Universe 6 is Universe 7's twin. That leads us to being introduced to more Saiyans, There's another Frieza over there. We find out Earth on that side is extremely messed up, and we know that Beerus' twin brother is the god of destruction of that universe. This is without mentioning that a lot of the fighting in this arc is extremely cool. Anytime Vegeta is fighting someone during this arc, the fight is guaranteed to be a banger. Vegeta versus Hit was fantastic. Vegeta versus Magetta was super cool, and Vegeta versus Kaba was in the same realm. Now, I want everyone to imagine the moment when Vegeta unveiled to Kaba that he could go Super Saiyan Blue, if that was the first time we ever saw it. Doesn't that alone make Resurrection F worth not existing? This arc isn't without its problems, but this arc is in no way one of the reasons that Dragon Ball Super sucks. Honestly, if this was your favorite arc of the Dragon Ball Super anime, I wouldn't even think that it's a bad take. The same cannot be said about the Goku Black arc. I think above all else, the Goku Black arc mostly suffers from poor execution. There are a lot of ideas in this arc that aren't necessarily bad things, but they're executed in extremely stupid ways, and it leads to this cycle where you're watching the story and things just sort of keep happening, and you have to accept the explanation and just move on and hope you get a better one later. One of the stupider problems in this arc is the fact that the arc could have been over almost immediately. Goku Black comes to the past and fights with Goku in Super Saiyan 2, and Goku just doesn't kill him for some reason. My issue with this is, like I said, poor execution. This could have been done in a far better way that both improved the pacing and made a lot more sense from a story perspective. When Trunks arrives from the future, he's unconscious. When he wakes up, he attacks Goku because he believes he's Goku Black. All that needs to happen is Trunks needs to stay asleep for a little while longer. Have Goku Black come back in time using the time ring as he did before, and then have him fight with Goku this way. He can even treat it as a friendly sparring match, acting as if he's Goku's friend, while in reality he's trying his hardest to kill him. You could even throw in subtle hints that this is Zamasu. Goku used Super Saiyan 2 to fight Goku Black, and he used Super Saiyan 2 on Zamasu originally. Have Goku Black say something along the lines of, "that form again," or something like that to subtly hint that he is Zamasu. At the time Goku fights Goku Black in the original story, he already knows how terrible of a guy and terrible of a person he is, so fighting him in Super Saiyan 2 just makes Goku seem kinda stupid. That is on brand for Dragon Ball Super Goku, but it's still jarring to look at in general, especially when Goku is holding back to such a degree. Had Goku been using Super Saiyan God to fight Goku Black, this wouldn't seem nearly as abysmal while still being stupid. Don't think that I'm saying it's not. It wouldn't have been nearly as abysmal because we know Goku isn't holding back to such a major extent whenever fighting him. It would leave it more up in the air as if when Goku goes Super Saiyan Blue, if he could really get the job done, while simultaneously establishing Goku Black as a super serious threat that needs to be dealt with. Zamasu is also an idiot. We're told that Zamasu tracks down Zuno in order to get the location of the Super Dragon Balls and find a way to swap bodies with Goku. Since he has Zuno virtually at gunpoint and can ask him infinite questions, why did he not ask, is there a way I can execute this plan without being caught in any type of way? Is there a way that I can kill all the gods of destruction extremely easily? He also could have potentially asked if there was another way to execute his current plan. I don't know, with the Namekian Dragon Balls or maybe the Dragon Balls of Earth. Both sets of Dragon Balls use far less power, and then he would still have the Super Dragon Balls in his back pocket to make an even bigger wish if need be. Again, this is just another example of extremely poor execution. Then we have the Potara retcon. In Dragon Ball Z, we're told that two people who use the Potara will merge into one person and they will stay that way forever. When inside of Buu, Vegito lets down his barrier and he turns back in to Goku and Vegeta. This went unexplained since that chapter came out all the way back in Dragon Ball Z. Dragon Ball Super would lead you to believe that it is due to the 1 hour time limit that they happen to defuse the moment they let down the barrier. That is just too much of a coincidence for me personally. The anime might make it seem like it, but if you've ever read the manga for that fight, there is absolutely no way that Vegito versus Super Buu lasted anything longer than 10 minutes. But let's say that the 1 hour time limit is just fine and okay. It at the bare minimum gives them a way that they can unfuse, even though Dragon Ball Super has already established through Supreme Kai and Shin that you can use the Dragon Balls to unfuse from the Potara fusion. This gives a quick and easy way that you don't have to use the Dragon Balls for. Sure. Then, right after this is established, we go into the fight and Vegito uses so much power that the Potara, I guess, get overloaded and they split the fusion anyway. What was the point of establishing the 1 hour time limit if it wasn't going to be utilized at all? Thankfully, we're told in Daima that the magic inside Buu's body does force the Potara fusion to be undone, but that was not on anyone's mind whenever this was being written. Goku explicitly asked Gowasu why they unfused in the first place, and Gowasu mentions that there was a 1 hour time limit. Like I said before, and I've been trying to establish, this is just another example of poor execution. Things are just being said and happening, and you just kinda have to accept it and move on. This arc also has other stupid things in it, like timeline issues and time paradoxes. That is natural with time travel stories in the first place, so I don't really care about that, but they're still pretty jarring to have to sit through. And then Trunks uses the spirit bomb at the end of the arc, which is just so stupid. Trunks has spent numerous times training during this arc. We never once see him train for the spirit bomb, and then the spirit bomb from like 11 humans is able to take out Zamasu. It's just not believable. This arc is cool. I mean, there's a lot to like in it, but there's also a lot to dislike in it, and overall it just seems kind of stupid. This is the part where I would start talking about the Tournament of Power, but I have much more massive issues with the Tournament of Power that I think I can justify making that its own video. Also, if it's wanted enough, I'll do another video about the manga exclusive arcs, the Granola and Moro arcs respectively. But to be fair, I don't have too much of a problem with the Moro arc, so that would be mostly me ripping into Granola.